The morning sun cast long shadows across Jake Miller's cornfields as he checked the irrigation system. His weathered hands moved with practiced ease, adjusting valves and checking water pressure. At 42, Jake had spent more years farming than he had in the Marines, but his military bearing never quite left him. His back stayed straight. His eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, and his movements remained efficient and purposeful. Amy Miller emerged from the farmhouse, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. At 19, she had her father's determined jaw and her late mother's keen intelligence. She handed Jake his coffee and stood beside him, both of them looking out over the vast expanse of corn that stretched to the horizon. "Dad, the weather report says rain tomorrow," Amy said, blowing on her coffee. "Should we move up the harvest on the north field?" Jake nodded, taking a sip of the strong brew. "Good thinking. Better safe than sorry." He had taught Amy to think ahead, to plan for problems before they happened. It was a lesson that served well in both farming and combat. Down the dirt road, Pete Carson was already working in his vegetable garden despite being 73 years old. The old man had been farming this land longer than anyone could remember. His back was bent with age, but his mind stayed sharp. Pete waved at Jake and Amy, and Jake waved back. In this small Nebraska community, neighbors looked out for each other. The Wright family lived on the farm to the east. Danny Wright was 28 and full of energy, always trying new farming techniques he read about online. His wife Lisa was a former high school chemistry teacher who now helped manage their organic farm. They had been married 3 years and worked together like a well-oiled machine. Bobby Lee ran the only mechanic shop in town, but he also kept a small farm on the side. At 35, Bobby could fix anything with an engine and grew the best tomatoes in the county. His shop was the unofficial meeting place where farmers gathered to drink coffee, share gossip, and solve problems together. None of them knew that high above Earth's atmosphere, alien eyes were watching their peaceful community. Commander Zexthal studied the holographic display showing Earth's agricultural regions. The Kethvar Empire had been monitoring human food production for months. Their advanced sensors showed vast fields of crops tended by primitive beings who used simple tools and basic technology. To Zexthal, humans looked like perfect slaves for feeding the Empire's growing military forces. "These creatures appear weak," Zexthal told his officers. "Their technology is crude. They spend their time growing food instead of building weapons. The conquest should be simple." The Kethvar had conquered 12 other worlds using the same strategy. They would send elite commandos to capture key agricultural areas, then use the local population as forced labor. The process usually took less than a week. Most species surrendered quickly when faced with superior alien technology and firepower. Squad leader Vexmar nodded in agreement. "My commandos are ready, Commander. 50 of our best warriors against primitive farmers. We will have control within hours." The Kethvar soldiers were impressive fighters. Each stood 7 feet tall with enhanced muscles and reflexes. Their black armor could stop bullets, and their plasma weapons could cut through steel. They had energy shields, night vision, and communication systems that let them coordinate perfectly in battle. They had never lost a fight against any enemy. Back on Earth, Jake finished his morning inspection and headed toward the barn. Amy walked beside him, talking about her plans to study agricultural science at the state university. She wanted to learn new ways to make their farm more efficient and environmentally friendly. "I think we could try that new corn variety next season," Amy said. "The one that uses less water but gives the same yield." Jake smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. After her mother died 5 years ago, Amy had thrown herself into learning everything about farming. She read scientific journals, attended agricultural conferences, and always looked for ways to improve their operation. Jake was proud of how smart and dedicated she had become. The radio in the barn crackled to life. It was Pete Carson's voice, coming through the old CB radio network that connected all the local farms. "Jake, you copy? I'm seeing some strange lights in the sky last night. Looked like aircraft, but they didn't sound right." Jake picked up the microphone. "I copy, Pete. What kind of lights?" "Blue and green, moving in formation. Too high to be helicopters, too quiet to be jets." "Just thought you should know." Amy frowned. Could be military exercises from the airbase. Jake shook his head. Airbase is 300 miles from here. They don't run exercises over farmland. His marine training had taught him to pay attention to unusual activity. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what. The HFY strike team moved through space toward Earth's surface. Their ship used stealth technology that made it invisible to human radar. They would land at night, establish a base of operations, and begin capturing humans at dawn. The plan was simple and had worked many times before. Target zone confirmed, reported Vexmar. Multiple agricultural facilities with small population concentrations. No visible defenses or military presence. This will be easier than our last 3 conquests. The alien commandos checked their weapons one final time. Each soldier carried a plasma rifle, energy grenades, and a personal shield generator. They also had restraint devices for capturing human prisoners and communication jammers to prevent the humans from calling for help. As the sun set over Jake's farm, he finished securing the equipment for the night. Amy helped him close the barn doors and check that all the animals were safely inside. The evening was peaceful, with only the sound of crickets and a gentle breeze rustling through the cornstalks. "Dad, do you miss it?" Amy asked as they walked back to the house. "The military, I mean." Jake considered the question. "Sometimes. I miss the brotherhood, the sense of purpose. But this is good too. We're feeding people, taking care of the land. That matters." He looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, alien ships were preparing to land. In a few hours, his peaceful farming community would become a battlefield. The HFY Empire expected easy victory against simple farmers. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The radio crackled again. This time it was Bobby Lee's voice, tense with concern. All stations. I'm picking up some kind of interference on all frequencies. Looks like electronic jamming. Everyone stay alert tonight." Jake felt his old combat instincts stirring. Something was definitely wrong. The alien ship touched down in Pete Carson's back pasture at 3 a.m. The landing was silent, with only a brief blue glow marking their arrival. 50 HFY Commandos emerged from the craft, their tall forms moving like shadows across the moonlit field. Squad leader Vexmar raised his hand and the soldiers spread out in perfect formation. "Remember, we need the humans alive," Vexmar spoke into his communication device. "They are more valuable as workers than corpses. Use stun weapons unless they resist too strongly." 3 miles away, Jake Miller sat up in bed. Years of military service had trained him to wake at the slightest unusual sound. Tonight, something had disturbed the normal rhythm of his farm. The crickets had gone quiet too suddenly. The cattle in the distant field were restless, moving around when they should be sleeping. Jake slipped out of bed and moved to the window. The moonlight showed his field stretching into darkness, but everything looked normal. Still, the feeling of wrongness grew stronger. He had learned to trust his instincts during 2 tours of duty overseas. Those instincts had kept him alive, more than once. Amy appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Not sure yet," Jake whispered. "But something's not right. Get dressed quietly, and grab your rifle." Amy nodded without question. Growing up on a farm had taught her to move fast when her father used that tone of voice. She had been hunting since she was 12 and could hit a target at 200 yards with her scope. Jake pulled on his clothes and retrieved his old service pistol from the gun safe. He also took the M16 rifle he had bought years ago, telling himself it was for protection against wild animals. The weapon felt familiar, in his hands bringing back memories of desert patrols and midnight watches. The CB radio in the kitchen crackled to life. Pete Carson's voice came through, urgent and afraid. "Jake, Danny, Bobby, anyone listening, there are people in my field. Tall people moving wrong. They're not human, Jake. I swear they're not human." Jake grabbed the microphone. "Pete, where are you now?" "In my root cellar. They came right past my window, Jake, 7 feet tall, covered in some kind of armor. They're carrying weapons that glow. What the hell is happening?" Before Jake could answer, the radio filled with static. Then Bobby Lee's voice cut through the interference. "My radio equipment is going crazy. Someone's jamming all frequencies. Military-grade stuff. This isn't some prank or training exercise. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Electronic jamming meant someone wanted to cut off communications. That was the first step in any military operation. He moved to the front window and saw lights moving across his nearest field. The lights moved in a search pattern, like soldiers sweeping an area. Amy, we're leaving. Now. They slipped out the back door and ran toward the barn. Jake's mind raced. Through possible escape routes and defensive positions, the barn offered good cover and multiple exit points. More importantly, it contained tools and equipment that could be used as weapons. As they reached the barn, 3 alien figures appeared at the edge of the cornfield. In the moonlight, Jake could see they were definitely not human. Too tall, moving, too smoothly, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. The lead figure raised some kind of device and pointed it toward the farmhouse. Jake pushed Amy behind a tractor and raised his rifle. His military training kicked in automatically. Identify the threat, choose your target, control your breathing, squeeze the trigger slowly. The rifle cracked and the lead alien spun sideways, its weapon flying from its hands. The other 2 aliens reacted instantly, raising energy shields that glowed bright blue. They fired back with plasma weapons that scorched the air and melted holes in the barn wall. Jake rolled behind a pile of feed sacks as superheated air rushed past his head. Amy, move to the far door. When I start shooting, you run for the tree line. I'm not leaving you, Dad. That's an order, soldier. Amy understood. When her father used his marine voice, there was no argument. She gripped her rifle and prepared to move. Jake came up firing, putting 3 quick shots toward the aliens. His bullets sparked off their energy shields but forced them to take cover. Amy sprinted across the barn and dove through the far door just as plasma bolts sizzled through the air where she had been standing. The aliens advanced on the barn, their shields deflecting Jake's bullets. But Jake noticed something important. The shields flickered each time they absorbed impact. They weren't unlimited. He also saw that the aliens moved carefully, like they weren't used to Earth's gravity or atmosphere. Jake grabbed a can of gasoline from his workbench and threw it at the nearest alien. When it hit the energy shield, he put a bullet through the can. Gasoline sprayed everywhere, some of it getting past the shield to splash on the alien's armor. The creature stumbled backward, probably not used to dealing with flammable liquids. From outside, Jake heard Amy's rifle crack twice. One of the aliens outside screamed, a high-pitched sound that definitely wasn't human. Amy had found a target. Jake used the distraction to grab more supplies. He stuffed his pockets with ammunition and grabbed a handful of road flares from the emergency kit. The aliens might have advanced technology, but they probably hadn't planned for angry farmers who knew their own land. The barn door exploded inward as one of the aliens fired a more powerful weapon. Jake rolled behind his combine harvester as chunks of wood and metal flew everywhere. The massive farming machine absorbed the energy blast, its steel body glowing red-hot but holding together. Jake smiled grimly. The combine harvester was built to handle rocks, mud, and anything else the field could throw at it. Apparently, it could handle alien weapons, too. He popped up behind the machine and fired at the alien who had just entered the barn. This time, he aimed for the legs below where the energy shield seemed to extend. His bullet hit the alien's knee joint, and the creature went down hard. The second alien raised its weapon, but Jake was already moving. He dove behind a row of farm equipment, as plasma bolts turned the air above him into a blazing inferno. The smell of burned metal and ozone filled the barn. Jake lit a road flare and threw it at a pile of hay bales. The bales caught fire immediately, filling the barn with thick smoke. In the confusion, he slipped out through a window and circled. Around behind the barn, Amy was crouched behind his pickup truck reloading her rifle. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek, but her eyes were steady and determined. 2 down on this side, Dad. But there are more coming from the fields. Jake counted muzzle flashes in the distance. At least a dozen aliens were moving across his property, their weapons lighting up the night. The CB radio in his truck was picking up transmissions from other farms. Danny Wright was under attack. Bobby Lee was reporting movement near his shop. The entire community was under assault by an enemy that shouldn't exist. But Jake Miller had faced impossible odds before. He had trained for 15 years to protect his home and family. These aliens had made a serious mistake. They had attacked farmers who knew how to fight back. Dawn broke over a battlefield that had once been peaceful farmland. Jake Miller crouched behind his overturned pickup truck, counting ammunition and planning his next move. The aliens had been attacking for 3 hours, but they hadn't achieved the quick victory they expected. Amy reloaded her rifle with steady hands despite the chaos around them. She had already proven herself as deadly accurate with her hunting skills, taking down 2 more aliens during the night. Her father watched her with a mixture of pride and worry. "Dad, I can see Danny's place from here," Amy whispered, pointing across the fields. There's smoke rising from his barn. Jake raised his binoculars and studied the right farm. Danny's combine harvester was moving in circles around his property, but it looked wrong. The machine had been modified somehow, with metal plates welded to its sides and something that looked like weapons mounted on top. The CB radio crackled to life. Danny Wright's voice came through, excited and slightly crazy sounding. "Jake, you copy? I turned my harvester into a tank. Lisa figured out how to mount my hunting rifles on the rotating mechanism. We're chewing up these alien bastards like wheat." Jake smiled despite their desperate situation. Leave it to Danny to weaponize farm equipment. The combine harvesters, massive size and armored construction made it nearly unstoppable against enemies who expected to face defenseless farmers. Lisa Wright's voice joined the transmission. "Jake, Amy, I need to tell you something important. I've been testing these alien weapons we captured. Their energy systems don't work well in our atmospheric conditions. The moisture in the air interferes with their plasma generators." That explained why the alien weapons seemed less effective than they should be. Jake had noticed the plasma bolts losing power over longer distances. Earth's environment was working against the invaders. Bobby Lee's voice cut through the radio chatter. "All stations, this is Bobby. I've got good news and bad news. Good news is I figured out how to jam their communications. Bad news is there are more ships landing. Big ones." Jake cursed under his breath. More aliens meant they needed to change tactics. Defense wasn't going to be enough. They needed to go on the offensive. Pete Carson's shaky voice came through the radio. "Jake, I'm in my workshop. I've been mixing up some of my crop protection chemicals. Remember that stuff I used to keep the bugs off my vegetables? Well, it turns out alien armor doesn't like it much. Ate right through their metal like acid." Jake's mind started working. Pete's chemical knowledge, Lisa's scientific background, Bobby's mechanical skills, Danny's weaponized farm equipment, and his own military experience. They weren't just random farmers anymore. They were becoming a coordinated fighting force. "Listen up, everyone," Jake said into the radio. "We're going to coordinate a counterattack. Pete, can you make more of that chemical weapon? Lisa, we need you to figure out more weaknesses in their technology. Bobby, keep jamming their communications. Danny, use that harvester to draw their attention. Amy and I will hit them from their blind side." The plan was risky, but staying defensive would eventually get them all killed. The aliens had superior numbers and technology. The farmers' only advantage was knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise. Jake and Amy moved through the cornfield, using the tall stalks for cover. Jake had learned guerrilla warfare tactics during his military service. Move fast, hit hard, disappear before the enemy can respond. The aliens were trained for open battle, not for fighting an enemy that melted away into familiar terrain. They reached the edge of Pete Carson's property, where 5 aliens had set up some kind of command post. The creatures were studying holographic displays and coordinating the attack on the surrounding farms. Jake could see their ship in the background, a sleek metal craft that looked like nothing humans had ever built. Amy tapped her father's shoulder and pointed to an irrigation ditch that ran behind the alien position. They could crawl through the ditch and get within 50 yards without being seen. Jake nodded and led the way. The ditch was muddy and cold, but it provided perfect concealment. As they got closer, Jake could hear the aliens talking in their strange language. The sounds were harsh and clicking, nothing like any human speech. Jake pulled out 2 grenades he had been saving since his army days. They were old, but he had maintained them carefully. He showed Amy how to pull the pins and throw them properly. She had never used grenades before, but she learned quickly. On Jake's signal, they both threw their grenades at the alien command post. The explosions shattered the holographic displays and sent 3 aliens flying. Jake and Amy immediately opened fire with their rifles, targeting the survivors. The aliens' energy shields were down, probably damaged by the explosions. Jake's bullets punched through their armor and the creatures fell without firing a shot. In less than 30 seconds, the command post was destroyed. Jake grabbed one of the alien communication devices and handed it to Amy. "See if you can figure out how this works. We need to know what they're planning." Amy studied the device with the same concentration she used when learning new farming techniques. The controls were strange, but the basic principles seemed similar to human electronics. After a few minutes, she managed to activate what looked like a tactical display. "Dad, look at this. I think this shows all their forces." Amy pointed to dozens of moving dots on the screen. "They have troops all over the county, but look here. This must be their main ship." Jake studied the display. The main alien vessel had landed near the old grain elevator in town. If they could capture or destroy that ship, they might cut off the aliens' ability to bring in reinforcements. The radio crackled with reports from other farmers. Danny had destroyed 6 more aliens using his modified combine harvester. Pete's chemical weapons had disabled an entire squad that tried to attack his workshop. Bobby had used his mechanical knowledge to create explosive traps that were taking a heavy toll on alien patrols. But the aliens were adapting too. They had stopped advancing in straight lines and were using more careful tactics. Some of them had learned to avoid Pete's chemical weapons. Others were finding ways around Bobby's traps. "Amy, we need to get to town. That main ship is the key to winning this fight." They grabbed weapons and supplies from the destroyed command post and started moving toward the grain elevator. The route would take them through 3 miles of farmland that was now crawling with alien soldiers. As they moved through a wheat field, Jake spotted movement ahead. 3 aliens were setting up an ambush near the road, probably waiting for escaping civilians. Jake motioned for Amy to circle around to their right while he approached from the left. The aliens never saw Amy coming. Her first shot dropped one of them before they knew they were under attack. Jake opened fire from the other side, and the remaining 2 aliens were caught in a crossfire with no cover. The battle was over in seconds. Jake felt a grim satisfaction as they collected more alien weapons and equipment. These creatures had expected to face helpless farmers. Instead, they were learning that humans were far more dangerous than they had imagined. As they continued toward town, Jake realized something important. The aliens weren't just losing battles. They were losing the war. Every engagement cost them soldiers and equipment they couldn't replace. Meanwhile, the farmers were learning and adapting faster than their enemies. The grain elevator was visible in the distance, with the massive alien ship beside it. Jake checked his weapons one more time. The final battle was about to begin. The alien mothership cast a dark shadow over the grain elevator as Jake and Amy approached the edge of town. The massive vessel was easily 300 feet long, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light. Energy. Conduits pulsed along its surface like glowing veins, and weapon turrets tracked back and forth scanning for threats. Jake studied the ship through his binoculars, his military mind automatically analyzing the target. The landing ramp was open with alien guards posted at regular intervals. More importantly, he could see human figures being herded into the ship by tall alien captors. "They're taking prisoners," Jake whispered to Amy. "Must be people from town." Amy adjusted her rifle scope, counting the visible enemies. "I see at least 20 guards around the ship, plus more inside. Dad, we can't take that many by ourselves." Jake was about to agree when his radio crackled. Danny Wright's voice came through, breathless but determined. "Jake, you read me? Lisa and I are about 2 miles from your position. We've got the harvester, loaded with every weapon we could find, plus some of Pete's special chemicals. Where do you need us?" Before Jake could answer, Bobby Lee joined the transmission. "I'm coming from the north with a truck full of explosives, homemade stuff, but it should knock a hole in anything." Pete Carson's elderly voice followed. "I'm moving slow, but I've got enough chemical weapons to melt that whole ship if we can get close enough." Jake felt a surge of hope. They weren't alone anymore. The scattered farmers were converging on the alien stronghold, bringing everything they had learned during the night's fighting. "Listen up, everyone," Jake said into the radio. "We coordinate this attack or we all die. Danny, use your harvester to hit them from the east. Draw their fire and keep moving. Bobby, approach from the north and target their landing ramp with your explosives. Pete, get as close as you can and use those chemicals on their hull. Amy and I will provide covering fire and try to rescue the prisoners." The plan was simple, but dangerous. They were attacking a superior force in a fortified position, but Jake had learned something important during the night. The aliens were trained to fight enemies who used similar technology and tactics. They weren't prepared for human creativity and determination. Amy checked her ammunition one more time. She had 32 bullets left, plus 2 alien weapons they had captured. The alien guns were powerful but difficult to aim accurately. She would stick with her familiar hunting rifle for precision shots. Danny's modified combine harvester appeared first, roaring across the field toward the alien ship. The massive machine had been transformed into a mobile fortress with steel plates welded over the cab and weapon mounts extending from every angle. Lisa Wright stood in the operator's cab, firing a mounted machine gun while Danny drove. The aliens reacted immediately, turning their energy weapons toward the approaching harvester. Plasma bolts scorched the air, but most of them splashed harmlessly off the machine's improvised armor. The few shots that penetrated were absorbed by the harvester's massive engine block and steel frame. Danny drove straight at the alien guards, using the harvester's cutting mechanism like a medieval war machine. The spinning blades that normally cut wheat stalks now chopped through alien armor and weapons. 3 guards disappeared under the massive machine before the others scattered. Bobby Lee's truck appeared from the north, racing toward the ship's landing ramp. The truck bed was loaded with barrels of fertilizer, gasoline, and other explosives Bobby had assembled in his workshop. He drove like a man possessed, steering one-handed while firing a shotgun out his window. The aliens tried to stop the truck with plasma fire, but Bobby had welded metal plates over his windshield, leaving only a narrow slit to see through. The truck absorbed dozens of hits before reaching the landing ramp. Bobby dove out of the truck just before it crashed into the ramp supports. The explosion lit up the morning sky, sending debris flying in all directions. The ship's ramp twisted and collapsed, trapping several aliens inside the vessel. Pete Carson approached from the west, moving slowly but steadily despite his age. He carried 2 large tanks of chemical mixture on his back, connected to a spraying device he normally used for crop protection. As he got within range, he began coating the ship's hull with the acidic mixture. The alien metal began smoking and bubbling immediately. Whatever their ship was made of, it couldn't resist Pete's agricultural chemicals. Holes appeared in the hull, and sparks shot from damaged electrical systems. Jake and Amy used the chaos to approach the ship from the south. The alien guards were focused on the other attacks, giving them a clear path to the damaged landing ramp. Jake could hear human voices calling for help from inside the ship. They climbed over the twisted wreckage of Bobby's truck and entered the alien vessel. The interior was dimly lit, with curved corridors that seemed designed for creatures taller than humans. Emergency lights flashed red, and alien voices shouted orders in their strange language. Amy pointed down a corridor where they could see human prisoners being held in some kind of energy cage. About 20 townspeople were trapped inside the glowing barrier, including the mayor, the librarian, and several other people Jake recognized. 2 alien guards stood between them and the prisoners. Jake signaled for Amy to take the one on the right while he handled the left. They fired simultaneously, and both guards dropped without raising an alarm. Jake examined the energy cage, looking for controls or a power source. The technology was completely alien, but basic principles of electronics were probably universal. Amy found what looked like a control panel and started pressing symbols at random. The energy barrier flickered and disappeared. The prisoners rushed out, grateful but frightened. Jake quickly organized them, sending the civilians toward the exit, while keeping anyone with useful skills. "Anyone here know anything about electronics or engineering?" Jake asked. The town's mechanic, Harry Bell, stepped forward. "I work on anything with wires or circuits. What do you need?" Jake pointed deeper into the ship. We need to disable this vessel permanently. Can you figure out their systems? Harry nodded grimly. Give me 5 minutes with their engine room and this ship won't be flying anywhere. While Harry worked on sabotaging the ship's systems, Jake and Amy secured the corridors. They could hear fighting outside as their friends continued their assault on the remaining aliens. Danny's harvester was still operational, chasing down enemy soldiers across the field. Pete's chemical weapons had eaten several holes in the ship's hull. Amy discovered something important in what appeared to be the ship's communication center. Holographic displays showed other alien vessels approaching Earth. The invasion was larger than they had realized. Dad, look at this. There are more ships coming. Dozens of them. Jake studied the display, his heart sinking. Even if they won this battle, it might only be the beginning. But then he noticed something else on the screen. The approaching ships were receiving data from the vessel they were currently sabotaging. Amy, if we destroy this ship's communication equipment, the other ships won't know what happened here. They'll expect an easy conquest just like this group did. Amy understood immediately. And when they land, we'll be ready for them. Harry. Bell's voice echoed through the ship. Jake, I found their engine room. This whole ship is about to have a very bad day. Jake grabbed Amy's hand and they ran toward the exit. Behind them, electrical systems began overloading as Harry's sabotage took effect. The ship's lights flickered and died, and the steady hum of alien machinery changed to a dangerous whine. They dove through the damaged landing ramp just as the ship's power core exploded. The blast knocked them flat and sent a mushroom cloud of smoke and debris into the sky. When the dust cleared, the alien mothership was a twisted wreck of melted metal. Jake helped Amy to her feet and looked around at their friends. Danny was climbing down from his battered but victorious harvester. Bobby was grinning despite a bandaged arm. Pete was leaning on his sprayer, exhausted but satisfied. Lisa was treating Harry's minor burns with a first aid kit. The CB radio crackled, with reports from other farms. The alien ground forces were retreating or surrendering. Without their command ship and communication systems, they were lost and confused. Jake realized they had won more than just a battle. They had proven that Earth's farmers were not easy prey for any alien empire. 3 days after the first battle, Jake Miller sat in his kitchen studying captured alien documents that Amy had translated. The holographic displays showed star maps, military reports, and communication logs that revealed the terrifying scope of the Kethvar Empire. Amy worked at the table beside him, her laptop connected to alien data storage devices they had salvaged from the destroyed mothership. Her natural intelligence and determination had made her surprisingly good at understanding alien technology. Dad, you need to see this, Amy said, pointing to her screen. The Kethvar Empire has conquered 43 different worlds. They always use the same strategy. Send scouts to identify agricultural planets, then attack farming communities because they think farmers are easy targets. Jake studied the translated reports. Each conquered world followed the same pattern. The aliens would land, capture the agricultural areas, and force the local population to produce food for the Empire's expanding military. Most species surrendered within hours of the first attack. But look at this. Amy continued scrolling through more documents. Earth is different from all their other conquests. Every other planet they attacked had unified governments and professional militaries that were defeated quickly. They've never faced anything like independent farmers with military training and local knowledge. The implications were staggering. The Kethvar Empire had built their entire expansion strategy around defeating organized governments and traditional armies. They had no experience fighting guerrilla warfare conducted by civilians who knew their territory intimately. Bobby Lee's voice came through the CB radio, interrupting Jake's thoughts. Jake, Amy, you need to get over here. I've got their communication equipment working and you're going to want to hear this. Jake and Amy drove to Bobby's shop, where they found him hunched over a collection of alien electronics he had somehow managed to repair and modify. The equipment hummed with energy, and holographic displays showed star charts and communication frequencies. I've been listening to their military transmissions, Bobby explained. The good news is, we completely destroyed their invasion force. The bad news is there are more ships coming and they're not happy about what happened here. Danny and Lisa Wright arrived, followed by Pete Carson. The entire group had become an unofficial war council, meeting regularly to plan their defense against future attacks. Harry Bell brought coffee and sandwiches, turning the mechanic shop into an impromptu command center. "What are they saying?" Lisa asked, settling into a folding chair. Bobby adjusted the alien communication device. "Well, I can't understand their language, but their computers translate everything into symbols and images. Apparently, losing 50 elite commandos and a mothership has caused quite a stir in their empire." The holographic display showed what appeared to be a heated argument between alien commanders. One group seemed to want immediate revenge, while another urged caution. Jake recognized the body language of military officers arguing about strategy. Amy leaned closer to the display, studying the alien text scrolling across the bottom. Her translation skills had improved dramatically over the past few days. "They're calling us the anomaly," she said. "One commander is saying Earth's farmers are clearly more dangerous than their intelligence reports indicated. Another one is arguing that it was just bad luck and poor planning." Jake felt a cold chill. "What did they decide?" Amy continued translating as new messages appeared. "They're sending a larger force, not just one ship this time. A full battle fleet with 500 soldiers and heavy weapons. They want to make an example of Earth to prevent other worlds from resisting." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the news. 500 alien commandos with advanced weapons and military vehicles. The local farming community had maybe 30 people who could fight effectively, and most of their advantages from the first battle wouldn't work against a larger, more prepared enemy. Pete Carson spoke first, his elderly voice steady despite the grim news. "Well, I reckon we showed them once that farmers aren't pushovers. We can do it again." Danny Wright nodded agreement. "We learned a lot from the first fight. We know their weapons don't work well in our environment. We know their armor is vulnerable to Pete's chemicals. We know they're not used to guerrilla tactics. But 500 of them," Lisa said quietly. "That's 10 times what we faced before." Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful farmland beyond the shop. The corn was growing tall, the wheat was ready for harvest, and everything looked normal except for the burned patches where alien weapons had scorched the earth. "We need help," Jake said finally. "We can't fight 500 aliens with just 30 farmers no matter how determined we are." Bobby leaned back in his chair, thinking, what about other farming communities? If we could get word out to agricultural areas across the country, explain what's happening. Amy's eyes lit up. The alien communications equipment. If we can figure out how to broadcast on their frequencies, we could warn other planets that were conquered. Maybe some of them would be willing to fight back if they knew it was possible. Jake felt a spark of hope. That's thinking bigger, but we need to focus on Earth first. Amy, can you use the alien technology to contact military bases? The government needs to know what's coming. Amy nodded, already turning back to her laptop. I think so. The alien communication systems are more advanced than ours, but the basic principles are similar. Give me a few hours. While Amy worked on contacting military authorities, the others began planning for the larger battle ahead. Pete started mixing larger quantities of his chemical weapons. Danny began modifying more farm equipment for combat. Lisa researched the aliens' biological weaknesses using captured medical data. Bobby worked on creating more explosive devices, this time with alien power sources that packed much more destructive force. Harry Bell studied alien vehicle designs, looking for ways to disable their transportation and heavy weapons. Jake coordinated the overall defense, using his military experience to plan ambush positions and escape routes. The coming battle would require everything they had learned about fighting aliens, plus new tactics to deal with a much larger enemy force. As evening fell, Amy called everyone over to her workstation. I made contact with Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. They didn't believe me at first, but when I started transmitting alien technical data, they got interested fast. A team of military specialists is flying here tomorrow to examine our evidence. Jake felt relief wash over him. Professional military support would make a huge difference in the coming fight. But he also felt pride in what the farming community had already accomplished. "Dad," Amy said quietly, "I also picked up some other transmissions. There are alien ships approaching 12 other agricultural worlds. The Kethvar Empire is launching attacks everywhere, trying to expand their food production quickly. Can we warn them?" Jake asked. Amy smiled. "I already did. I sent technical data about alien weaknesses and tactical information to every planet I could reach. If other farming communities fight back like we did, the Empire is going to have a very bad day." Jake looked around at his friends and neighbors. 3 days ago, they had been simple farmers worried about weather and crop prices. Now they were part of an interstellar resistance movement, sharing military intelligence across the galaxy and preparing to defend Earth against invasion. The Kethvar Empire had made a serious mistake when they chose to attack Earth's agricultural communities. They were about to learn that human farmers were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had imagined. The alien fleet appeared in Earth's sky just after dawn, 5 massive warships that blotted out the morning sun. Commander Zexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the peaceful farmland below with cold determination. This time, there would be no mistakes. 500 elite Kethvar soldiers would crush the human resistance completely. "Begin the assault," Zexthal commanded. "Deploy all forces simultaneously. Show these primitive farmers the price of defying the Empire." On the ground, Jake Miller watched the ships descend through binoculars from his position in the old grain silo. The military specialists from Peterson Air Force Base had arrived as promised, bringing advanced weapons and communication equipment. Colonel Sarah Hayes, a veteran of 3 combat deployments, commanded the military response. "Jesus Christ," Colonel Hayes muttered, studying the alien fleet. "How did you farmers manage to defeat the first wave?" Amy Miller smiled grimly from her position at the communications console. "We learned that aliens aren't as smart as they think they are." The past week had transformed the farming community into a military operation. Trenches and bunkers connected. Every farm building. Underground tunnels allowed movement without detection. Every field had been turned into a maze of obstacles, traps, and ambush positions. More importantly, word of the farmers' victory had spread far beyond Nebraska. Agricultural communities across 3 states had sent volunteers and supplies. The original 30 defenders had grown to over 200 fighters, all of them familiar with rural terrain and guerrilla warfare tactics. Pete Carson, now 93 years old but still sharp as a tack, had trained teams of volunteers to manufacture and deploy his chemical weapons on an industrial scale. Alien armor that had once seemed impenetrable would dissolve like paper when exposed to his agricultural acids. Danny Wright had become the commander of a mechanized unit built around modified farm equipment. Combine harvesters, tractors, and even crop dusters had been converted into weapons of war. The aliens expected to face infantry and light vehicles, not armored farming machines that could operate in any terrain. Bobby Lee had established workshops in 3 different locations, each one producing explosives, communication jammers, and improvised weapons. His mechanical genius had been combined with alien technology to create devices that even the Empire's engineers would find impressive. Lisa Wright coordinated intelligence gathering and tactical planning. Her scientific background helped her understand alien technology, while her teaching experience made her excellent at training volunteers in combat techniques. The first alien dropships touched down in the same fields where the original battle had taken place. This time, instead of 50 commandos, 200 soldiers emerged from each vessel. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and their armor gleaming. They walked directly into the largest ambush in human history. Jake gave the signal, and the farmland exploded into chaos. Hidden mortars began firing shells filled with Pete's chemical weapons. The alien soldiers' energy shields flickered and died as acidic compounds ate through their power systems. Without protection, they became vulnerable to conventional weapons. Danny's mechanized units emerged from concealment, attacking the landing zones with modified farm equipment that the aliens had never encountered before. Combined harvesters with armored cabs and mounted weapons plowed through alien formations like mobile fortresses. Amy coordinated the battle from the command center, using captured alien communication equipment to monitor enemy transmissions and Direct friendly forces. Her ability to understand alien technology had made her invaluable for real-time intelligence gathering. "Dad, they're trying to call for orbital bombardment," Amy reported over the radio. "I'm jamming their frequencies, but they might get through." Jake wasn't worried about orbital bombardment. Colonel Hayes had brought some surprises of her own. As soon as the alien ships had entered Earth's atmosphere, military satellites and ground-based weapons had locked onto them. The aliens might have superior technology, but Earth's military had been preparing for space warfare for decades. High above the battlefield, F-22 fighters engaged the alien fleet with missiles designed to penetrate energy shields. The aliens found themselves fighting a two-front war against both ground forces and aerial attack. Commander Zexthal watched in disbelief as his supposedly invincible forces were systematically destroyed by primitives using improvised weapons and crude tactics. His soldiers were trained for conventional warfare, not for fighting an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike hard, and disappear into terrain they knew intimately. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from multiple sectors," his communications officer reported. "Our forces are taking heavy casualties. The humans have weapons and tactics we didn't expect." Zexthal studied the tactical displays showing his forces scattered across the battlefield. Red indicators marked destroyed units and disabled vehicles. In less than 2 hours, he had lost over half of his invasion force. "How is this possible?" Zexthal demanded. "These are farmers, not soldiers." On the ground, Jake Miller was asking himself the same question from a different perspective. How had a small farming community managed to coordinate a defense that was destroying a superior alien force? The answer, he realized, was simple. The aliens had never faced an enemy that combined military training with intimate knowledge of the local terrain. They had never fought people who were defending their homes, their families, and their way of life. Every farmer in the battle knew exactly where to find cover, which fields provided the best concealment, and how to use agricultural equipment as weapons. They fought with the desperation of people who had nowhere to retreat and the skill of individuals who solved practical problems for a living. Pete Carson's voice crackled over the radio from his position near the grain elevator. "Jake, I'm looking at their main ship through my scope. That thing's got to be their command center. If we can take it out, the whole invasion falls apart." Jake studied the alien flagship hovering over the town. It was heavily defended, but it was also the key to victory. "Pete, can you get close enough to use your chemical weapons on their hull?" "Son, I've been dealing with pests for 70 years. One more won't hurt." The final assault began at noon. Every available fighter converged on the alien flagship while Danny's mechanized units kept the remaining ground forces busy. Pete Carson, despite his advanced age, led the attack on the command ship with a determination that inspired everyone around him. Amy provided technical support, using her understanding of alien systems to identify weak points in the ship's defenses. Her translations of captured documents had revealed critical information about Kethvar construction methods. The battle for the flagship was fierce, but brief. Pete's chemical weapons ate through the hull like acid through paper. Bobby Lee's explosives demolished critical systems. Jake's military expertise coordinated the assault with precision that the aliens couldn't match. Commander Zexthal found himself trapped in a ship that was dissolving around him, attacked by enemies who used agricultural chemicals as weapons of war. As his command systems failed and his soldiers surrendered, he finally understood the truth. The Kethvar Empire had built its expansion on the assumption that agricultural worlds would be defenseless. Earth's farmers had proven that assumption fatally wrong. As the sun set over the battlefield, Jake Miller stood with his daughter Amy, looking at the wreckage of the alien fleet. Farmers from across the region were helping to secure prisoners and salvage alien technology. "Dad," Amy said quietly, "I intercepted transmissions from other worlds. Farming communities on 6 different planets fought back successfully. The Empire's expansion has stopped completely." Jake smiled, thinking about the alien commanders who were probably trying to figure out how their invincible military machine had been defeated by farmers with improvised weapons. Pete Carson walked over, leaning heavily on his sprayer but grinning with satisfaction. "Well, Jake, I reckon we taught those aliens something about farming." "What's that, Pete?" Pete looked out over the fields where alien wreckage was scattered among the corn stalks. We've been dealing with pests for thousands of years. We know how to protect what's ours. In the weeks that followed, Earth's agricultural communities became the center of an interstellar resistance movement. Amy Miller's translations of alien documents revealed the locations of conquered worlds, while the farming techniques that had proven so effective against the Kethvar became a template for liberation movements across the galaxy. The empire that had once seemed unstoppable found itself fighting defensive wars on dozens of fronts against enemies who used creativity, determination, and intimate knowledge of their home terrain to overcome technological superiority. Jake Miller returned to farming, but he kept his weapons ready. The Kethvar Empire had learned that Earth's agricultural communities weren't victims, waiting to be conquered. They were warriors who happened to grow food, and across the galaxy, other species were learning the same lesson. The age of easy conquest was over. The farmers had shown them how to fight back,